1 p.m. live stream. Take a moment, jump in the chat, say hello. Hit that like and subscribe button, etc., etc., etc. All the things I say. We're here today to talk about Freemasonry as usual. In this case, what we're going to talk about is, amongst other things, tariffs, my concern about the 35% tariffs and how that is going to affect Freemasonry and why Freemasons should care about that. We're also going to talk about the James Webb Space Telescope because there's some cool things happening there and why that is relevant to Freemasonry. And we're just going to hang out. But as usual, the first hour or so is just going to be us hanging out, waiting to see who joins. I'm doing well, Smokey. How are you doing? You'll be getting a message from me. You should be getting a message from me on Discord tonight at some point around 8 or 9 Eastern. So we'll have the date scheduled, and then I'll put that in my calendar. But I'm doing well. How are you doing? How's your stream going, by the way? And how is work going for you and all that other good jazz? And congratulations, by the way, once again to friend of the channel and brother, Courtney, who yesterday got his entered apprentice degree. I'm very proud of him. I'm sure that, it was an excellent night. He sent me some pictures, which was really, really cool to see. So congratulations to him on getting his first degree. Getting ready for work right now. Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great day at work. And thank you for joining. As always, the first hour is going to hang out, see who joins and what they want to talk about. And then from there, we'll switch over to the main topics. If I had enough space. Yes, I agree. Congratulations, Courtney. It reminded me of American Dad, right? I think, or even, yeah, I would say American Dad. Or I'm trying to think of the other one. I can't think of it now. I think I started watching it season 3, right? You told me to start watching it season 1. With just trying to write this here. Hold on just one second while I get this poll question up. In Canada or the USA? It's neat that it's completely for free on YouTube.
Radar.
But I liked it. I'm not normally like a cartoon guy, but I enjoyed it. I'm trying to think of the episodes that I watched. I think I think Gina Falcone is my favorite character. Right. I liked Fair enough. I think no is okay. I think no is perfectly fine. It's interesting. It is 1 million over 1 million subscribers, so it's a very popular show. I like the one where they stormed the Capitol. They had the guy dressed up. I think it was Jimmy Falcone. They had him dressed up as that QAnon shaman or whatever it was. So that was kind of amusing to me. So yeah. Oh, we got 3 votes, 2 no's and 1 yes. That's Gina, right? That's Gina Falcone. Do you think Kenny say will affect Masonic Lodge in Canada or the USA? To the people who said no, let me know why. I got Smokey's answer. The people who said yes, let me know why. My personal view is yes. I think that I'll talk about why I think that is the case in a second, or not in a second, probably about an hour in, to be honest. But yeah, I think it will. I think anytime you have anything that's going to affect the pocketbooks of a member, it is going to affect the Masonic Lodge itself. Because as a member has potentially less money, has to work more hours, has less disposable income, the amount of money that they have to dedicate themselves to Freemasonry, financially or otherwise, is going to, decrease. At the same time, the costs associated with and for the lodge are going to increase. So it's one of those situations where it's really tough to say for sure, but I think, I can't imagine it not having an impact. And we're seeing that in other places as well, right? Anytime you have uncertainty and fear in the economy, that uncertainty and that fear is going to end up affecting Freemasonry as well. There's a reason why, membership numbers dropped so much during the Great Depression, while at the same time rose so quickly during the Roaring 20s. So for now, though, answer the poll questions. Let me know how it's going, and let me know what it is you guys want to talk about. Any questions about Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral? Any comments, any thoughts? Put them in the chat, and we'll see what people have to say. Well, I mean, that's just the nature of anything, right? I mean, economic news is always going to be, it's always going to matter for Freemasonry, right? I mean, you cannot separate the economic, political, social conditions of the community from what's happening within a Masonic Lodge. Yes, I saw the pictures, Courtney. I think I threw those hearts on there. Thank you so much for sending me the pictures. I truly appreciated it. And thank you for letting me know. And congratulations on what is, I'm very proud to have you as a brother. So I hope you get my card soon. Once you get it, you can let me know by shooting me off a message. I truly appreciate it. I am bald. I'm not bald. I got hair. I got plenty of hair. I just need I keep it short because I need the aerodynamics, I need to be able to move quickly in the wind. Right, when I'm in a wheelchair and the wind is blowing, I need to make sure I'm as aerodynamic as possible. Ray Nash, please hit that like and subscribe button. Yes, I am younger than you, Courtney. So don't ever forget that. I'm a young man compared to you, which is my goal. I am, so long as I stay younger than Courtney, I'm happy. And I'm hoping, with a little bit more time, maybe I can make it to your 3rd degree. Oh, geez, I didn't even notice that. All right. See, when Dad joins the stream. There, are you happy? I even buttoned it up for you. We got my shirt buttoned now too. Maybe. There, that's the best I can do for you. I work at this. If you want to support me in my work at this, you can become a Patreon. A Patreon member, you get some different items at different levels. It will be a lot of fun. So hit the join Patreon at patreon.com/square and compass, or you can just hit the like button and subscribe and do all that jazz. I think you and Courtney are close, but I am 41, so I'm younger than all of you, so deal with that. Funny Republican is 18. Well, way to make me feel very, very old, Funny Republican. Now that now I feel like I'm just one step away from the grave. So long as none of us are older than my dad, I think that's okay. I can say Courtney was kind enough to send me some pictures, which were wonderful. Thank you so much, Courtney, for that. It looked great. I loved the coin. You're gonna get a few more coins as well. So, Ray Nash, you can't see, but he said I look 60, which, geez, Louise, I'll have to live with that, I guess. We have 2 votes. Do you think the CAUS tariffs will affect Masonic Lodge Canada, the U.S.? 3 yes, 3 no's. I'm going to talk about why I think the answer is yes in a second. But first, I'm going to, like I said, the first hour is just a hangout hour. So we'll see who joins. My favorite dish is raw oysters. I love oysters. They are my favorite things in the world. So I love seafood. Anything seafood, I would go for. The average person isn't able to comprehend beyond the political realm. I mean, you have to name fighting Republicans, or what would you think? What do you mean by that, though? Can you explain that? What does it mean to comprehend beyond the political realm, or to not be able to comprehend beyond the political realm? Even if I was AI, that wouldn't make what I say any less valid. That's the key. Thank you, Smokey. I'll take that. Right. I'm looking. I should tell people I'm 60 so that people, so that people think I'm just incredibly well put together. Seeing food and eating, that's the best diet, I suppose. But no, for me, oysters, fish, anything from seafood, I think is the best. So that's my favorite dish. With the exception of sushi. I'm not a huge sushi fan, to be honest, but it's a whole other thing. I mean, I think the American Navy could, because the American Navy, I think, is much, much bigger, and there's just more of them than Canada. However, Canadians are pretty tough, so I'd like to think we'd put up a decent fight. I'll take Ron Perlman. He's a handsome fellow. Somebody just put in there, Ron Perlman looking. Welcome, Dennis. I feel like it's been a little while since I've seen you. How's it going? I hope you're doing well. I hope that you'll hit that like button. What is happening in the world for you? We're going to give this, like I said, another 45 minutes, then I'll start on the main topic. Or main topics, but the first bit I always just like to hang out with people and see what anybody has to say. So any questions about Freemasonry, any thoughts, positive, negative, or neutral, I'd love to hear them. Yeah, Co-Masonry, they are primarily in France. I think there's some other Co-Masonry lodges around the world as well. But I think the majority of Co-Masonry lodges is actually in France. That sounds like a great dish. Not so much the weed and beer, because I'm very boring that way, but the steak, mashed potatoes, that sounds really good. Well, so where do I do my research, Fighting Republican? What do you mean in terms of, like, do you mean my research on Freemasonry, my research on, like for Freemasonry, it's primarily, based upon my own experiences therein, supplemented by my interviews and podcasts with Masons who have different levels of expertise in different areas. When it comes to, let's say, economics and the way I think those will affect Freemasonry, oftentimes it's based on, I mean, CNN, different YouTubers I really enjoy. Peter Zihan, I think, is interesting. And oftentimes they're looking for what's trending in terms of trying to figure out what topics I want to discuss. What's trending combined with what I think is relevant to Freemasonry, right? So, for example, the reason I'm not talking about Jeffrey Epstein, even though it's really popular on YouTube right now, is because that doesn't really involve Freemasonry at all. And so there's nothing to talk about connects to that. So, what are my thoughts on Jordan Peterson? Not a fan. Not a fan. Yeah, not a fan of his stuff and his work. I think that he has mastered the art of saying a lot of words without actually saying anything meaningful. Yes, get your butt to work, Smokey, but thank you for being here. I truly appreciate it. Like I said, you should see a message coming at you tonight at some point. So, around 8 or 9 Eastern. Right? And the thing I don't like about Jordan Peterson as well is his kind of pseudo-intellectualism. I think a lot of young men use as a way to, like, they're searching for something that they honestly could find in a Masonic lodge, but instead of joining a Masonic lodge, they try to find that thing through Jordan Peterson, and it just makes things worse because Jordan Peterson, I think, is not somebody I particularly want to rely on as a source of wisdom of any sort. Mr. Keeps on Ticking is not a fan of Jordan Peterson either. So the two of us do have something in common. At least with 100% agree on that one. Funny probably, though I'm guessing you're a fan of Jordan Peterson. I'm not positive. But you can let me know what you think of Jordan Peterson if you want in the chat, as well as just anything else that you guys want to talk about. While we wait for more people to join, the first hour is usually spent hanging out, waiting to see who finds us, and going from there. And he's very good at that too. So it tricks a lot of people into thinking he's saying more than he actually is, which is unfortunate, shall we say. And also, I mean, he has the same problem that everybody online has, including me in some ways, right? Which is when you are online, your audience can kind of customize the experience, right? He's this guy online. He talks a lot, but he says a lot of nonsense. But he got a big following online on social media, so... Nice. What type of burritos are you having? He's big in the manosphere as well, Jordan Peterson, which again, I've talked about the manosphere in the past, why I think that is dangerous for, well, what are the dangers of that, like with the play Angry Allen, for example. Um, oh, steak and cheese, nice. So, did you talk last night at all, Courtney, about when your second degree would be? And then your third degree? I know it's 30-day minimum, if I recall correctly. But did they chat with you about that at all? Just hanging out right now, waiting for people to join. Like I said, the first hour or so is just hanging out. But we will be talking about the tariffs, all that good jazz, shortly. One thing I still want to talk about actually is Freemasonry in Iran, or the Grand Lodge of Iran in Exile, which is actually located out of California. So that's kind of my goal of places one thing I want to talk about. If anybody on the stream happens to know anybody, by all means, let me know. They are like the Grand Lodge of Iran in Exile. So there was Freemasonry in Iran when the revolution took place in, I can't remember when it was, 78, I think it was. The Masons in Iran, a lot of them fled, ended up in America and California, and started the Grand Lodge of Iran in Exile. Hopefully one day they will be able to return to Iran and Masonry will once again exist there. But in the meantime, to my knowledge, there are lodges located in California. Though I don't know a lot about it, so my hope is to learn more about it. There's been some reports, like if you Google it, it pops up, but I don't know enough about it to say. So if anybody knows anybody from the Grand Lodge of Iran in Exile, please let me know. I'm hoping I can get to interview them. Well, stopped clock is right twice a day, I think, with Peterson. Like, he just says so much that every now and then he's going to get something right. Christopher Castro. Are you new to the stream, Christopher Castro? Because we had a Chris Castro on before, but he usually came off as Chris Castro, and it was a different picture. If you are new to the stream, please hit like and subscribe. Well, when you say what is Mason's teachings on fear, when you capitalize it, are you using like it as an acronym, or you just mean, okay, do you just mean the actual like emotion of fear, right? Because again, there's no really Masonic teachings per se. There is Masonic ritual. I would say when it comes to Masonic rituals, one thing it kind of teaches us regarding fear is, at least when it comes to our mortality and death, not to necessarily fear it nor to give in to fear, but rather to try to approach the things that scare us with a sense of temperance and humility, but also, bravery, right? To be prudent in the face of fear, but also to be brave or steadfast in the face of fear. I would say that lesson primarily exists within the third degree, but also exists in the first degree in a certain component where when you're feeling fear or apprehension, you're kind of taught both not to, out of fear, refuse to move forward, nor out of overconfidence, rush forward into danger, but rather to remain temperate in all things, right? And so I would say that is a Masonic teaching on fear. Again, it's not really a teaching per se. I'd say it's ritual regarding fear. Because teaching implies that you have Freemasons teaching other Freemasons about, how to live in the world, which is, I would use the term ritual. What is the Masonic ritual regarding fear? And I think what the ritual tries to encourage us to remember is, when faced with fear, the best approach is neither to rush headlong into it at risk to ourselves, nor is it to, retreat out of fear, but rather to find the happy medium, the temperate medium, the do medium between those two emotions. Sometimes when people say fear, what they're talking about is the acronym, which you hear sometimes in like AA meetings, right? Fuck everything and run is oftentimes what, fear is an acronym for. Which again, one thing Freemasonry kind of the ritual imparts upon us is, you may, while afraid, want to say screw it and just run away, but usually that is not the best approach either. That will just cause you more problems down the line. If that made any sense. Game Man said hi. Hello, Game Man. I hope you're doing well. 9 votes. Do you think the USA Canadian tariffs will affect Masonic lodges? Canada USA? No, 56%. Yes, 44%. So there you go. Once we get an hour in, we'll start talking about that specific topic. Like I said, usually the first hour, though, we wait to hang out and see who joins and what it is that you guys want to talk about. So let's give it a little bit of time. Please, if you are joining us and you're new, hit that like and subscribe button. And let me know if you have any thoughts about Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral. I'd love to hear them. And we're going to give it, like I said, a bit more time, see who joins before we start talking about any specific subjects. Chris, I hope my answer made sense. Well, they're great women. I don't know. It's great to see Eastern Star. Eastern Star is one of those groups. It's a part of the Masonic family, a great part of the Masonic family. It's unfortunate that the Eastern Star numbers have been dropping over the years. But I'm hoping that as Freemasonry makes a comeback, so will Eastern Star. Eastern Star. I mean, I always say, right, when it comes to Freemasonry, Freemasonry is an umbrella term that refers to a lot of different groups and organizations that all have some type of connection to Stonemason Guild. So that includes Eastern Star as part of the family as well. Not really, other than, Rotary Club's another civic organization, and Rotary Club is kind of like the Elks, the Moose, the Odd Fellows, Oh, the Oddfellows is a little bit more affiliated than others. They're kind of all these civic groups that kind of all were kind of in the same stew of civic and civil society, right? And there are many Rotarians, I think they're called, members who are also Freemasons, certainly more so in the 20s and the 50s. Right, but so there's more unofficial than official connections. Well, back then, too, that would have been, you were an apprentice probably in the 60s or 70s. Back then, even though the numbers had started to drop at that point, it was still far more popular than it is today, both Eastern Star and Freemasonry. So you'd run into a lot more Eastern Star members a lot more often than you do, unfortunately, in 2025. But again, hopefully that can change over time if we just keep working at it and working on it. And I think that we will, sooner or later, if we just keep putting in time and effort, find a way to make those things work and bring back a lot of these organizations and groups. But as an apprentice in, like I said, the 60s or 70s, you would have seen a lot more Eastern Star members than you do nowadays. That's for sure. Do you think CAUSA tariffs will affect Masonic lodges in Canada and the U.S.? 10 votes, yes. 50%, no. 50%. Let me know, for the people who said yes and the people who said no, why you voted the way you did. 1968. All right, so yeah. I mean, numbers were much higher in England as well as just in Canada and the United States for both of those organizations, for Eastern Star and Masonic lodges in general. I'm just inviting some people onto the stream to say hello. (1968) must feel like a very long time ago, as well as maybe in some ways feels like it was just a couple minutes ago, Dad. It's amazing how much time flies. We're just giving a bit more time. We're going to wait to see who joins. Like I said, about an hour in is when I will start talking about these specific topics. We're going to start with tariffs and then work our way from there to some science stuff, the James Webb Space Telescope. But the first hour, I just kind of hang out and wait to see who joins and what they want to chat about. So, Courtney, was there anything in particular? Obviously, you can't be sharing secrets, but just in general, anything in particular that, from yesterday's EA degree that really stood out to you, that you really enjoyed, or, you feel like is going to stick with you? Which I know it's tough, by the way, because the degrees are always, the degrees, the first time you get any degree, it's always kind of a whirlwind. But, yeah, let me know. What's the drinking age in England? Is it 18? Well, there's civic organizations. I don't know a ton about them. The Rotary Club, to my knowledge, was always primarily like for business owners, right? Like Rotarians were people who own businesses and communities, right? Rotarian, Rotary International. Um, it's a global, it's a global service organization. Actually, sorry, I was thinking of like Chamber of Commerce type thing. Rotarians are individuals from diverse backgrounds dedicated to serving their communities through dedicated to serving their communities and the world through various service projects and initiatives, right? Whereas Lions, I think, is more of a civic organization. Optimist Club, civic organization as well. They're just civic organization groups. I mean, there was a time in the 1920s where, you had these civic groups just exploding. You had the Lions, the Optimists, the Rotaries, the Chamber of Commerce, um, the Freemasons, the Oddfellows, the Elks, and there was actually a term, it was called like a derisive term. It was called Barry the Joiner, and it was somebody who joined like all of these different groups and organizations, not because they cared about any of the groups and organizations, but rather just because they wanted to be like known in the community as somebody who's everywhere. Maybe they wanted to run for mayor of the town, or they owned a parking used car lot and wanted to like, I don't know, sell cars. So they were famous for like every night of the week they were at a different social function or civic organization or whatever it might be. Um, and it could be the Optimists and the Rotaries and the Lions and the Elks and the Masons. Um, but again, that was in the 1920s when you had a excellent economic situation at the time, as well as you had just the roaring 20s, right? You had booming economies, and men, especially men, were comfortable joining 56, whatever, 5, 6, 7, 20 different community and civic groups and paying dues in all these groups. Once you hit the 1930s and you had the economic downturn, you had a lot less Barry the Joiners out there, right? Which again goes to show why we as Freemasons need to be paying attention to the economic conditions in our communities. Yes, networking, as Rondo says, which again, I'm not, I'm not opposed as much as other people might be. I'm not opposed to this idea of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Of like, if you're joining a Masonic lodge because you want to, I don't know, network because you're a car salesman or something, or real estate agent. Like, I'm not going to necessarily say that that's a bad thing. The danger is if that's the exclusive reason you join, you're probably not going to stick around. And again, that goes into this idea of economics of it as well. If you're joining to give your business a boost, but the community is experiencing an economic downturn due to, for example, tariffs, you might be disappointed with that, with what's happening and with your ability to get a boost. So, yes, as Rondo says, though, networking was a reason. I mean, also sometimes it was political networking. A lot of guys would join Masonic lodges because they wanted to be the mayor of the lodge or whatever it might be. So, I was not a fan of that either. But I'm not going to say it's not completely without merit. By the way, Rondo, how is it going for you? I hope that you're doing well and having a good day. Let me know how it's going. We're just spending the first, 20 more minutes hanging out and chatting, and then we're going to switch over and start talking about specific topics, starting with the tariffs. Gonna wait to see if anybody else jumps in the chat to say hello. Gonna invite a few more people. I do have some more of these events coming up. August 16th, so 10 days from now, we're going to be live streaming from the Windsor Hip Hop Festival, supporting local artists, which is something every Freemason should do. You don't have to support every artist in the community, but anytime you can, I think it behooves Masons and Masonic lodges to try and support local businesses and local artists and just support local in general. So that is August 16th. I'll be live streaming from the Hip Hop Festival from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern or thereabouts. August 21st, I'm going to be having a 3-hour live stream on Instagram. I've never really gone Instagram live before. So I'm going to see how that goes and who we get. And then August 21st, starting at 2 p.m., I'm going to do another 24-hour live stream. So we'll see how that goes as well. So everybody will hang out for all of those. And I'm going to be doing a live stream on my personal channel, Cameron Adamson, with Smokey. So once I can find, I'll send him the information. And that'll be fun as well. He's a friend of the channel here and my personal channel as well. And it'll be fun to do a live stream with him on as well. We're just going to wait to see if anybody else jumps in the chat. Maybe I'll give it another 10 minutes and I'll start on the main topics. There you go. And I agree with Courtney on that 100%, right? And that's kind of my view on it as well. What affects the individual Mason can also affect the lodge as a whole. Increased consumer prices, maybe he has to work more hours, maybe he doesn't have the funds to pay for, he doesn't have the funds available to pay for dues, for example, or maybe he needs to rely on a Masonic lodge to cover the cost of some of his items, like he needs benevolence, basically, right? So you end up in a lot of different situations where the lodge is going to be affected. And if the lodge is affected, how do we, as Freemasons, try to deal with that, try to weather the storm? I'm just giving it a couple more minutes. Before I start, hit that like and subscribe button if you get the chance. And yeah, I hope everybody is doing well. By the way, I always talk about my love of anything scary related. Alien Earth is coming out August 12th. Crystal Lake is coming out at some point. I don't know when. Then you've got together are right now, you've got Weapons coming out on August 8th. You've got him coming out, and then you've got The Long Walk, you've got Shelby Oaks. Like, it is incredible, all of the things we got coming out horror. We are getting spoiled if you like horror movies like I do. So all right, I think we might as well get started now. We'll see if anyone else jumps on the chat. If anybody else has any questions, though, or anything that they want to talk about, please let me know. But I think we'll get started. Our first kind of topic is going to be based on the poll question, Canadian USA tariffs and how they may or may not affect Masonic lodges in Canada or the United States. And you could argue with this specific batch of tariffs, and I'm speaking specifically of the Canadian-USA relationship and the tariffs imposed therein. I know that Donald Trump and the Trump administration have imposed a lot of tariffs, on other countries at different levels and different rates, including Mexico. I know there's been different deals made with different countries. The extent to which the tariffs between, let's say, United States and Mexico, between United States and India, between United States and any other country, the extent to which those tariffs will affect Freemasonry as well, I think is worth exploring. But I'm going to focus on Canada and USA because I live in Canada, I travel to the USA often, and I think, starting to see some of those effects. The other thing to keep in mind, we're talking about Canadian USA tariffs, is there's kind of two levels that we need to consider it on, right? The first is the actual economic impacts of the tariffs themselves, and how that affects Freemasonry. But there's also and we saw this before they were even implemented, there's just the constant discussions around tariffs, the uncertainty between whether they would or would not be imposed and at what rates they would or would not be imposed, and whether they will or will not be modified over time, right? All of those things also affect Freemasonry, right? Because even before the tariffs themselves were implemented, the fact that you even had the discussions and the ongoing discussions, sometimes the threats, if you want to call them that, sometimes the talk about the 51st state tied into all of that, it did affect relationships between the two countries. You have travel between Canada and the United States significantly dropped. And I do know or have known several Canadian Masons who advised me that they would not be comfortable traveling to the States. Part of it is as a protest against the tariffs, part of it as a protest against the discussions around 51st state rhetoric from Donald Trump. Part of it just general kind of concern about the economic and political climate therein, right? But either way, Canadian Masons are not traveling to the United States, in my experience, in my discussions, as often as they used to, for, in general, as well as specifically for Masonic events, right? And that is going to be affecting Masonic meetings in, let me just, for example, when you have, 90% of the Canadian population lives within an hour of the Canadian-US border, right? Cross-border travel between Canadian and US Masons, in certain areas in particular, Detroit to Windsor, it's very common to see Canadian Masons traveling to Michigan and Michigan Masons traveling to Windsor. You also saw that with, for example, Niagara Falls, Hamilton and Buffalo. You can see that regularly in some parts of the Maritimes, Sault Ste. Marie, even Vancouver, Seattle. There was a traditional history of a lot of Masons traveling between those two cities for Masonic events. I don't have any data. I can only speak anecdotally about Masons I know saying that they were not comfortable traveling to the States for the purposes of, not exclusively Masonic events, but traveling to the States for Masonic events or anything else like that. So that was even before the tariffs themselves were implemented. That was based just on the talk of tariffs. And I mean, you're seeing that just in the broader community, right? Like, let me pull up the stats quickly. I had this article I read out before. Right, this was 4 weeks ago from CBC News. Canadian travel to the U.S. plummets, but Americans are staying home too. Right, and so we also, when you talk about it the other direction, American Masons visiting Canada. U.S. visitors slid by 10% in June amid Trump tension, according to Stats Canada. So again, this is from July 10th, 2025. It's not just Canadians who are holding back on cross-border travel amid a U.S. trade war that has soured bilateral relations. The number of Americans coming to Canada is also dropping off. New data published by Statistics Canada Thursday shows a 10.4% decline in U.S. resident trips by automobile in June, a steeper drop than what was registered the month before. According to the federal agency, 1.4 million Americans made the trip north by auto last month, compared to roughly 1.56 million who did the same last year. The decline has political and business leaders on the Canadian side of the 49th parallel concerned, given how much these visitors spend when they come. Right? Canadian trips to the U.S. continue to plummet. The number of Canadians returning from trips to the U.S. by air fell 22.1% in June, compared with the same month 1 year earlier, according to StatsCan. Canadian resident return trips by automobile dropped by 33.1%. Right. You start to see this significant drop in February of 2025 as U.S. President Donald Trump ramped up his 51st state rhetoric and slapped tariffs on all imports. It prompted a Canadian backlash, anthem booing, and hurt feelings on both sides of the border. The immediate result was a drop in cross-border traffic, with Canadians pulling back on travel in a big way, and their American neighbors doing the same, but to a lesser extent. The number of American-plated cars crossing into Canada dropped by 6% in February, 4% in March, and 7% in April. Niagara Falls, Ontario, particularly dependent on American travelers, with as many as 3 million of them coming north to take in the unofficial 8th World Wonder any given years. Revenue from American travelers is off by 9% so far in 2025. Right, and so when we're talking about these tariffs, and we're talking about the effect the tariffs will have on Canadian U.S. Freemasonry, it's not simply the tariffs that we are discussing. We're also discussing just the talk of tariffs and kind of the 51 state talk and all the rest of it, even before the tariffs were put into place, that in and of itself affected the relationships, right? Even another, story, this time from CTV News. Travel between Canada and the United States has continued to fall this summer, new federal data shows. Published Thursday, the latest figures count 1.66 million Canadian residents returning from travel to the U.S. in June, down 22% for trips by air and 33% for trips by automobile from the same time in 2024. The decrease stands in contrast to Canadian travel overseas, which saw a 7% increase. Right, and there was a fifth consecutive month of declining traffic in 2025. So basically, 33% drop in Canadians driving to the United States and a 22% drop in Canadians visiting the United States by air. And that is going to be reflected in Freemasons traveling to the States less for Masonic events, as well as flying less to the States for Masonic events, right? But that was even before the tariffs themselves had been put into effect. That was when the tariffs were simply being talked about and discussed and threatened. We now, as of August 1st, so 5 days, have a 35% import tax on Canadian goods not covered by the Canada-US-Mexico agreement, which governs trade between the three countries. So as of August 1st, we have a 35% import tax officially placed on Canadian goods. We're already seeing those effects in Windsor. Let me just pull it up here. Right, so, this was from 3 weeks ago. So this, again, was before even the tariffs were put into place, but the tariffs were threatened. Windsor, Ontario, my hometown, once again holds the highest unemployment rate in Canada. And Mayor Drew Dilkins says the worst may still be ahead. We going to have to stick together, Dilkins said. He's the mayor. I can't promise this isn't going to get hard before it gets better, but it will get better. Statistics Canada reports Windsor jobless rate rose to 11.2% in June, up from 10.8% the month before. It's the only census metropolitan area in the country with a rate above 11%. Dilkins said that the timing is no coincidence, pointing to a renewed tariff and uncertainty around cross-border trade 6 months into Donald Trump's second term. I've always said Windsor is going to get hit first and we're going to hit the hardest. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you for being here. So I would say, yes, Windsor will get hit the first and will get hit the hardest, but let's keep in mind, I would say all border towns are going to get hit very hard by these tariffs. And where do you see the most cross-border Masonic travel? In border towns. The Maritimes, Niagara Falls, Windsor, Seattle, Vancouver. If you are a Freemason on a border town and you regularly travel to the States for Masonic events, once these tariffs hit you and now you're dealing with the economic fallout from those tariffs, what is that going to mean for your ability to travel, your desire to travel, right? The impact, the mayor says, is now showing up in the region's tool, dye, and mold industry, where many businesses rely on stable export volumes and long-term production planning. You have a lot of tool, dye, and mold companies who have to book business that might be 6 months full. The book of business has dried up, and the order book is empty, and so they are laying people off. Flavio Volpe, president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, said the trend is not unique to Windsor. There's nothing specifically haunting Windsor other than the President of the United States haunting the entire sector. Volpe says tooling firms across North America are dealing with paused investments fewer orders, and intensifying foreign competition, particularly from China, right? And as he says at the end, the mayor, we're going to make it through as a community. We're not going to go down the tube because of Donald Trump. So Lapis, what I'd say is actually Freemasonry, I know there's a lot of perceptions that it's a wealthy group. There are some Masons that have a lot of money, plenty who don't, right? Plenty of Masons who are not themselves that wealthy. And that's the issue as well, right? So first of all, you have all of the talk of tariffs. That in and of itself resulted in, amongst other things, resulted in significant drop in cross-border travel from Canadians to the United States, 33% by car, 22% by air. That means less Canadian Masons traveling to the States for Masonic events. That in and of itself affects Masonic lodges and their ability to hold events and the ability for fraternal relationships between the two countries. Then you take that, then you add, once the tariffs come into place on August 1st, now you've got increased unemployment in border towns. Windsor, for example, over 11%, affecting tool and die manufacturers. So if you are a Mason, right, and now you're facing economic uncertainty due to the tariffs, does that mean, for example, you need to work more hours to ensure that you're financially stable? And if you're working more hours, do you have the time necessary to dedicate yourself to your Masonic lodge? If you're working constant overtime or working longer hours to make the same amount because you're dealing with increased prices, do you have the disposable income to pay your yearly dues? Right? Like, for example, I know I said, and it's true, Masonic dues are between $100 to $200 per year, American usually, which sounds like not that much. But if, you are in a stage where you're economically vulnerable, these tariffs have hit your business, you're having to lay people off, you don't want to, do you have the disposable income to pay for your dues? Or do you need to defer that? Do you have the disposable income to pay for tickets to a Masonic banquet or a special Masonic event? Maybe it costs $25, $50 for a ticket. Do you have the $25 or $50 to pay for the banquet ticket? Do Masonic lodges have and if they don't get people to buy tickets, can you hold these events? Right? The costs associated, and then you get at the other side of it. So as you have unemployment rate, right? So we have in Windsor right now, or as of 4 weeks ago, a 11.2% unemployment rate. If any Masons find themselves being part of that 11.2% unemployment rate, will they need to go to the Masonic Lodge to request benevolence to cover costs for housing, cover costs for food, cover costs for whatever it is while they are looking for a new job? Will that deplete our lodge's benevolence funds or our lodge's funds in general, right? And then the other thing to keep in mind is just increased operating costs, especially, like as Lapis says, and he's not wrong, we own buildings, not all the time, but many Masonic lodges do own their own buildings. You need to get materials to do some repairs, to do some fixes. You want to maybe renovate the building, modify the building. Now those costs are going to go up with tariffs. They're not going to go down, right? The materials that you need to do those renovations will increase with tariffs, right? We are 5 days into the actual tariffs. So it's hard to know exactly what the consequences have been for Freemasonry, but even if you, even if you look at what's happening before the tariffs were implemented, just announced, you were seeing those drops. Well, so Mr. Keeps on Ticking. In terms of the travel, like I said, there is between Canadians traveling to the U.S., as of 4 weeks ago in July, there was a 33% drop in travel by car and a 22% drop in travel by air. It wasn't so much that, the economic impact of the tariffs, it was more Canadians being upset and frustrated by the fact that you had a president threatening these tariffs, as well as, people saving their money out of fear of the economic impact of the tariffs, right? And, for example, Windsor, many businesses rely on imported goods for their businesses, right? They rely on importing materials from the States, especially tool, dye, and mold industry. They both rely on products coming in as well as products coming out, right? And so, if the tariffs are resulting in increased costs, 35% import tax, which is causing Americans to purchase more local, which is affecting Canadians' ability to both import and export. What you end up with is economic downturns, right? So it's not so much that we are importing. It's, first of all, many of our businesses rely on exporting goods to American consumers, as well as needing to know the cost of things. So as costs go up, because also, we will have retaliatory tariffs, right? As Flavio Volpe, president of the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association, says, there's nothing specifically haunting Windsor other than the President of the United States haunting the entire sector. Volpe says tooling firms across North America are dealing with paused investments, fewer orders, and intensifying foreign competition, particularly from China, right? And so, again, it's one of those situations where if you're, and this isn't just Canada per se, right? If you are, let's say an American, you have your American Masonic Lodge, you have your American Masonic Temple, you need to import some type of goods or services. That's, you need to import lumber from Canada in order for renovations. That price is going to go up, right? You're not wrong, Mr. Keeps on Ticking. Housing affordability and unavailability is another big deal. However, having said that, keep in mind, as tariffs go up, the cost of housing goes up as well, because you need materials to build new houses. Those materials are lumber, metal, whatever it is. If you're tariffing those materials, the cost of a house is going to go up. It's going to increase, right? As will the cost of goods in general. Now, there are some things that, tariffs may encourage more local, domestic production, which is, you could argue it's worth it and it's a good thing, but we'll see. Certainly right now, Canadians are feeling the pinch, are feeling the hit. And again, you see that where Windsor, a border town that is reliant heavily on manufacturing, has an over 11% unemployment rate, right? And again, how many Freemasons are represented in that 11.2% unemployment rate? How many Masons now are needing to, say, rely on Masonic lodges for benevolence to help them get through rough times? How many of them will have the money to pay for their dues to maintain their Masonic memberships? How many Masonic lodges are now facing increased costs of maintaining their building, right? And that also includes the other way, to the States, right? How many Masonic lodges in the States are seeing increased costs as it relates to, importing materials from Canada, let's say lumber, for example, or are seeing economic impacts of these tariffs in terms of increased costs of goods and increased costs of goods in particular, in which case, are they going to have the money to spend on their dues? Are they going to have the money to spend on their um, Masonic special events, etc., etc.? Mr. Keeps on Ticking, if that makes any sense, let me know if it did. And you're not wrong, housing unavailability and affordability is a huge deal. But again, uh, if material prices go up, is that going to affect the cost of housing? Right now, and I do think this is a good thing, right? As of August 5th, Carney, our Prime Minister Carney, hints at dropping some U.S. tariffs if it will help Canadian industries hit by the trade war. And the Prime Minister also unveiled a $1.2 billion aid package for softwood lumber industry while in BC. Prime Minister Mark Carney showed no signs of retaliating against U.S. President Donald Trump's increased tariffs, and even suggested he's open to removing existing tariffs if it would help Canadian industries. Carney faced questions Tuesday about Canada's next steps after the two countries failed to reach a trade deal by the August 1st deadline, resulting in a 35% import tax on some Canadian goods not covered by the Canadian-US-Mexico agreement. The Trump administration said it was there to respond to fentanyl trafficking, which in my opinion is nonsense. The amount of fentanyl coming through the border is incredibly small. The Canadian government has imposed retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods 3 times since the trade war began, with counter tariffs on $60 billion worth of U.S. consumer goods and additional tariffs on U.S. autos, but that doesn't look like they're going to continue with that. We've always said we will apply tariffs where they had the maximum impact on the United States and minimum impact on Canada, said Carney when asked why he hasn't fired back against the new tariff rate. So we don't automatically adjust. We look at what we can do for our industry that's most effective. In some cases, it might be to remove tariffs. Carney floating the idea of dropping tariffs is notable after Trump granted Mexico a 90-day pause on tariff hikes with the goal of signing a new deal. His next steps will be closely watched as he juggles expectations from Canadians and an unpredictable president. You know, the ambassador saying Canada not get hit that hard. Again, when you have an 11.2% unemployment rate in the town which has perhaps the greatest amount of Canadian-U.S. trade coming through, I think that is, I think we did get hit pretty hard. The Trump administration continues to link its trade war with illegal fentanyl smuggling, despite U.S. Customs and Border Protection data showing fentanyl seizures from Canada make up less than 1% of the total U.S. seizures of the drug. Carney was in British Columbia to announce $1.2 billion in supports for the Canadian softwood industry, which is experiencing another round of devastating duties. This sector has a long-standing target of the U.S. with recently raised anti-dumping duties on Canadian softwood, which has seen thousands of workers laid off over the last few years. So again, what is, those thousands of softwood lumber workers that were laid off, what percentage of those were Freemasons who, due to losing their job, had to move away to find new work and leave the Masonic Lodge they were a member of? How many of them were considering joining and then left because they needed to find a new job or just couldn't pay their dues anymore or needed to rely on Masonic benevolence to cover their costs, right? Or just resulted in a general economic downturn of their community, which ended up affecting the Masonic Lodge. Hopefully that's the case, Dad. Hopefully that is the case. Right? As they said, it weakens our industry, the softwood lumber industry's ability to weather downturns. It makes lumber more expensive. If lumber is more expensive, renovations on our buildings will be more expensive. Renovations on a Mason's home will be more expensive, right? As costs go up, the amount of money people have to spend on quote unquote, um, uh, discretionary spending such as Masonic dues goes down. We even saw that with charitable giving, right? Like, if you look at the news, you know, uh, from MSN, the quote was, "Fear tightens wallets." And the tariffs are definitely creating a level of fear. Multiple Windsor charities are among the latest victims of U.S. President Donald Trump's trade war. A collection of local charities have issued a joint plea for help after fears and economic pressures sprung from Trump's tariffs caused a sharp decline in giving. "We're all looking for donations," said Heidi Holtz-Nurse, a resource development coordinator with Matthew House Refugee Welcome Center. "Overall charity giving has dropped since last year. When you've got a shortfall and you're trying to figure out how to make it work, it is a stressful thing." Leaders of the Downtown Mission of Windsor, Downtown Windsor Community Collaborative, Feeding Windsor Essex, Matthew House, Safe Families of Windsor, Windsor Life Center, and Windsor Lifeline Outreach signed on to the call for help. They said the declining donations due to rising tariffs are severely affecting their ability to help people in need. When fear tightens wallets in hard times, it's the hungry and cold who pay the highest price. The cost of not giving is counted in empty plates and bare shoulders. The charities said escalating trade war has hit them with increased cost of goods, supply chain disruptions, and other inflationary pressures. Those increasing costs have also caused even long-term donors to pull back to support as they struggle to buy food and pay their own bills. So if long-term charitable donors are pulling back from donations as they struggle to buy food and pay their own bills, at what point will that mean long-term Masons pull back for the same reasons? Or to what extent will that now mean Masons are being asked to be even more charitable with their benevolence funds? I don't know what that means. What is 14 stages of investor emotions in the stock market? What I like here is Hodge-Nurse said the plan has spread far beyond the charities that made the request for help. "There's been a downturn with all of the charities," she said. "We deal with a lot of charities who in turn donate to us. They're seeing a downturn in donations, and we're experiencing that as well. Everyone realizes we're in a very tricky financial state. We are pulling together as best we can. Windsor is hit very hard." And again, if Windsor's hit very hard, Windsor Masons are hit very hard. Welcome, Tony. How's it going? I hope you're doing well. If you're not done so yet, please hit that like button. What stage would you say we're at right now, Lapis? Thank you, Tony. I truly appreciate it. Did you answer a poll question? And if you did, what did you say? I'm traveling. I'm always traveling, both literally and metaphorically. Right. And the thing is, I've been talking about this primarily from the Canadian impact, right? I've been talking about this from the, from Windsor, for example, with the 11% unemployment rate. The U.S. economy is starting to show signs of adverse impact of higher tariffs as well. Right, U.S. markets ended the day in red yesterday. 5th of August, 2025. This after some latest economic data showed that the U.S. jobs market had been in a weak state for quite some time. USA's trade deficit in June came down year on year by 16% to $60.2 billion. That's the lowest trade deficit in more than 2 years. Imports of consumer goods came down significantly as the impact of higher tariffs started getting shown. U.S. trade deficit with China came down by almost 33% to $9.5 billion, etc., etc. Right? So what we're seeing is the U.S. job market has been in a weak state for quite some time. Trade deficit came down. Imports of consumer goods came down significantly as the impact of higher tariffs started getting shown, right? Like, I'm not saying this is exclusively because of tariffs. There's many reasons for this. However, as it says here, the jobs report that enraged Trump was flashing a recession warning sign. And this is from CNN. The leading culprit for slowing jobs growth may be the thing that has been holding the Fed back from cutting rates. Trump's tariffs. The Fed has been in a wait-and-see mode in case tariffs pushing prices higher. The flip side is that the U.S. economy appears strong enough to handle higher interest rates, but it seems businesses are no longer waiting. They're freezing, hiring, and changing their investments as they grow fearful that tariffs could raise costs and hurt the economy. Right? Even in India, Trump threatens India with 50% tariffs as negotiations fizzle. So it's not exclusive between Canada and the U.S., and it's not exclusive to Canada. But I guess the point of all of this is we now have in Canada a 35% tariff on goods not covered by the current trade agreement. You're seeing the economic impacts of those tariffs and of that uncertainty, both in the unemployment rate in Windsor, rising costs, and a significant impact on many sectors. And you have been seeing for several months, maybe it's more an emotional reaction or response, a significant drop in cross-border travel between Canada and the US, including some Masons not wanting to travel for the same reason. All of the above points to not just challenges for communities as a whole, but civic groups and civic organizations within those communities, including Freemasonry. I think we as Freemasons need to be aware of these challenges and these headwinds and try to do what we can to assist. I think we as Masonic lodges should be, when we can, focusing on supporting local businesses. We should, for example, use local restaurants to cater our refreshments, especially if it's a small business and a new business. They may need the support. We should pay attention to our benevolence funds, because again, if unemployment starts to increase, more brethren may be needing that benevolence. If we as Freemasons are nervous about traveling, let's say Canadian Masons are nervous about traveling to the States, the money that you would spend traveling to the States, it may be worth instead traveling within Ontario, within our province, within our country, and visit lodges therein. And when you visit those lodges, stop at the local restaurant if you can. Buy a souvenir at a small mom and pop shop. Try the local coffee shop, whatever it is. Find ways to support these businesses, right? That's also why I would call on the government to reinstate the staycation tax credit, to encourage Canadians to travel within the province if they are not willing to travel outside the country, or to travel within the country if they're not willing to travel outside the country, as a way to encourage local tourism, which would have the added benefit of supporting Masonic tourism. And my last thing is, I would say, is I understand, again, I've been told by some Masons that they are not comfortable traveling to the States at the moment because of, the rhetoric from Donald Trump, the 51st state thing, what feels like punishing tariffs. I would recommend that maybe reconsider that, because ultimately you have to be willing to separate the people in a country from the government, and certainly the Masons. And we want to try to maintain, I think, our Masonic relationships as much as we can, because sooner or later Trump will be gone, knock on wood. And at that point, we don't want to have, so moribundly, we don't want the relationships between Canada and the US to be so moribund that it takes time and effort to regrow them. We want to be able to maintain those relationships as much as we can. So we have the Americans visiting us in Canada and the Canadians visiting us in visiting Masons in the States. I think it doesn't help anybody if those fraternal relationships kind of atrophy over the next 3 or 4 years. That's why I choose to continue visiting the States myself. I was just in Chicago. I had a great time. But that's also why when I'm in Canada and I'm going grocery shopping, I try to look for groceries that are Canadian, produced in Canada. So I try to do both. I could, Courtney, 100%. And that's another example of, again, if people rely on the Canadian dollar for their income, for imports, whatever it might be, and they're a Mason and they have a weakened Canadian dollar, do they have the disposable income to pay their dues? You know, the example I've given this before, there's a reason why Masonic membership was so, healthy in the 1920s and fell apart in the 1930s, and we lost many Masonic buildings, or almost lost many Masonic buildings. Freemasons were positively infected by the Roaring '20s and seriously harmed by the Dirty '30s and the Depression of the '30s. And so we as Freemasons need to be paying attention to these things, thinking about them, and thinking about how we can help by relying more on purchasing local goods and services for our meetings, by traveling more within our jurisdictions to support Masonic lodges therein, and when traveling, taking the time to support local restaurants and businesses within the same, and not allowing the economic and political climate to impact our relationship with our brothers around the world, including in the States. So I hope that made some sense. If it did, let me know. Dispassionate Observer is back. Well, I think I'm intuitive, but I'm not psychic. Psychic to me implies a supernatural quality, which I don't believe in. But I do believe some people are more intuitive than others. Like, I think I'm pretty good at being able to look at people and recognize how they're feeling and how they're doing. But I'm certainly would not call myself a psychic. So how's it going, by the way? Even here's a great example of it as well. When I, as a Canadian Mason, would travel to the States for Masonic events, often I will take the US or the Windsor Detroit tunnel bus from Transit Windsor, which was a wonderful service. I loved it very much. August 2025 is the final month for the US, for the tunnel bus, right? It's the final month. This is from CTV. It's the final month for the Transit Windsor's regular tunnel bus service to Detroit. I don't think I know who William Cooper is. The service comes to an end on August 31st after it was cut down during the city's 2025 budget process. Ward 3 City Councilor Ronaldo Agostino says the end date should not come as a surprise. The city announced it back in March. Agostino says even though the regular tunnel bus service is coming to an end, the special events bus will continue to operate into December, right? People would like to see it continue in some form or another. I know we're working very closely with the Free Press Marathon, etc., etc. Right. The reason for the tunnel bus cancellation was, as Mayor Drew Dilkin said in several news articles, it was because of the tariffs, Trump's rhetoric, etc., etc. The idea that why would we basically Windsor subsidizes the service. I mean, it costs them far more to run than they make in revenue, right? Why would we subsidize people traveling to the States if the States is going to slap these tariffs on Canadian goods and services, as well as, you know, talk about annexation in the 51st state? Which I can understand the logic, but as a consequence, as of August 31st, it is now going to be more expensive for me and anybody else who wants to travel to the United States for, amongst other things, Masonic events, right? And so that's just one perfect example of what I was talking about in terms of tariffs and rhetoric affecting my ability as a Freemason to visit my Masonic brothers in the States and in specifically Detroit, but not exclusively, right? It's, you know, it's an extra, it's basically going to be double the price at a minimum now to travel from Windsor to Detroit. Um, if I want. And then, you know, usually I would take the tunnel bus and then fly in Detroit because flying in the States is a lot cheaper than flying from Canada to the States. All that stuff, the prices go up. Does it make financial sense for me to keep traveling to the States as often as I do? Right? That's one of those examples. Goodbye, Dad. Thank you for being here. I hope that you are doing well. I'll see you potentially tomorrow. Welcome, Harry Baccarat. I do not know who William Milton Cooper is. Who is this fellow? And thank you for being here, by the way. I hope everybody's doing well. Please take a moment, if you're just joining, hit that like and subscribe button. A throne of gold does not... No, I mean, another way to put that is the belt does not make the man in wrestling terms, or the apron does not make the Mason. I would describe it as that as well, right? What did he do? What did this William Milton Cooper do? Do I need to look him up? Let me see this. He was from 1943 to 2001. Behold a pale horse. Well, I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theorists and conspiracy theorism, and you know, Freemasonry is not in the FBI. I know Hoover was a Mason, I learned, but you know, the FBI is not a Masonic organization. Yeah, I've never read his stuff. Um, Looks like he was a tax evader as well. Well, Harry Backrack, when you say it that way or type it that way, my assumption is you don't believe me, but that's okay. I can tell you based on my experiences, you can take them for what it's worth. Freemasonry, or the FBI, is not a Masonic organization any more than any other governmental organization is a Masonic organization. These are separate organizations. But I hope everybody is doing well. Thank you for being here. I hope you hit the like and subscribe button. Um, I am going to, so I think I'm done talking about the tariff idea. Basically, we as Freemasons need to be aware of these tariffs and the climate around these tariffs and how it's going to impact our membership. Because it's going to impact our membership, we need to potentially start looking at what we have for benevolence, how we can support local businesses, how we can travel within our jurisdiction to support communities within Canada and Ontario, and how we can, despite the tensions, maintain our relationships with our Masonic brothers in Ontario, in America, so that when this is over, we have not allowed those relationships to atrophy. And I hope that everything I said made some sense. And I'm going to remind everybody of what I've got. Welcome back, Ryan. I do want to remind everybody about what I have coming up. August 16th, right? Sunday, August 16th, I will be live streaming from the Windsor Hip Hop Festival. We talk about supporting local. That means supporting local artists and supporting local artwork. So please, tune in for that. We'll get to see some great Windsor artists, some great Windsor hip hop artists. We will talk about how Freemasons can support local art. We're going to see some people out and about. It's going to be a lot of fun. So please check me out there. That is the Windsor Hip Hop Festival, August 16th from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be live streaming. On Wednesday, August 20th, I'm going to have an Instagram live stream. I'm going to try something new, see how that goes, which is going to be a lot of fun. And then August 21st, I'm going to have a 24-hour live stream starting at 2 p.m. August 21st and going to 2 p.m. August 22nd, which is going to be an absolute blast as well. So I hope you guys will follow me for all of that. Ryan, don't forget, August 30th, we have our softball game. Make sure you come to that. It'll be an absolute blast. And yeah, I hope that everybody follows me for some or all of those. Why do you say of course? What would make that an obvious thing? You say that like it's just an obvious thing that they would be. I mean, I never met any Freemasons that were members of the intelligence community, at least to my knowledge. I don't ask every Freemason I meet what they do for a living. But every Freemason that I know what they do for a living, none of them are members of the intelligence community. Oh, with the Masonic joke from Lapis. That is true. That is something you can do. But that strikes me as kind of a weird way to put it, Harry Bacharach, to say, of course you can. I mean, I don't think there's nothing inherently about Freemasonry that would, indicate that it would have any connections to any connection or connections to the intelligence communities. Well, but everybody keeps secrets, right? Like you're not gonna. Everybody keeps some secrets. So, for example, Harry, you're not gonna. If I were to ask you what your social insurance number is or your bank information, you're going to maintain those secrets, right? But just because one has secrets does not mean one is cut out to be or interested in being part of the Secret Service. Yes, the Smashing Machine, Courtney. I'm interested in seeing that as well. So that does look pretty cool. I have no idea what cutouts all right mean, or I have no idea what a cutout is, but okay. No, it looks really good. I'm with you. I think it looks awesome. So, um, I would love to check it out also. It's on my list, but there's a lot of great movies coming out right now. So it's tough to say because there's so many what looks like great movies um, that are coming out. I can't wait for it. Uh, I guess it depends how you want to define those terms. I think it's more practical. I think it's more practical because if you define Freemasonry as I do, as the belief that the world can be made better through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth, then that's a very practical kind of thing, right? And I think one of the biggest mistakes we in Freemasonry have made is we sometimes focus too much on the theoretical and not the practical ways that we can make the world better, right? For example, the fact that more Masonic lodges are not talking about tariffs and how those are going to affect us in the world and how it's going to affect our Masonic lodges is an example of us focusing too much on the theoretical and not enough on the practical. Um, Ryan McKee, The Rock, I wouldn't say that. I would say the best wrestler in 2025 is Cody Rhodes or MJF. Um, or I think he needs to be remembered as well. Josh Alexander is pretty incredible. Those are a lot of great ones as well. Yes, Trump is in the Hall of Fame. That makes me very sad because I'm not a Trump fan at all. Don't like him, but what are you going to do? In espionage, cutout refers to a mutually trusted intermediary method or channel that facilitates communication between agents or agencies. So you're saying that Freemasonry is the cutout? I feel like I would have noticed something like that taking place. Again, as having been to so many Masonic lodges and meetings, not always, it'd be hard to see the manner in which it could be used as a cutout. Drew McIntyre's up there, Jey Uso's up there, these guys are all up there for sure. Well, there are many Freemasons who are not. I don't know if I've ever met any Freemasons who would actually even admit to being communist. I know some Freemasons who are more on the left, many who are more on the right. I guess I would say I consider myself right wing, but I kind of in 2025 I would I guess view myself more as left wing, just compared to where the parties are. But um, I would say I can't think off the top of my head of any Freemasons who would describe themselves as communist. So I highly question that. Um, and certainly, you'd also have to define what communism means. Because what I do find is sometimes when people discuss political, like communism, they describe it in such a way that the garbage sanitation workers could be considered communist because it's a community, the community pays for the service. So I would define communist as well there. But I did want to mention, I have talked about this in a little while, but a huge congratulations to the Euclid Space Telescope. This was from June 25th, 2025. The Euclid Space Telescope launched in 2023 with the goal of taking images and spectral data of optical and infrared wavelengths covering around 1/3 of the sky. Euclid is able to image objects with fantastic sharpness because the telescope is in space and responsive to very low brightness. One of Euclid's goals is to map the universe structure and probe the nature of dark matter and dark energy on the cosmic scale. Because it can see such a wide area, Euclid can give astronomers an idea of how astronomical objects are clustered on a cosmic scale. Right, but it also includes other scientific investigations, like one project that looked at the population of dwarf galaxies. Well, I do not think space is fake. Space looks pretty real to me. Right, they discovered 2,600 low mass, low surface brightness faint galaxies from data released by the Euclid space mission. Right, why is that important from a Masonic perspective? I mean, I do like science fiction, but I don't believe space is fake. Might be the oldest sport in history. Maybe running might be older, but I would say, wrestling has to be one of the oldest. But the reason why we talk about Euclid Space Mission on this Masonic channel, right, where is it here? Right, the Euclid Space Mission is named after the ancient Greek mathematician Euclid of Alexandria, who pioneered the field of geometry. The mission's name reflects the connection between the density of matter and energy and the geometric structure of the universe. Right? And so if we as Freemasons believe that geometry connects to and is connected to what it means to be a Freemason, which I do believe that as well, then part of what that also means is that we as Freemasons need to care about the way geometry is used in other areas and other factors of the world, including the ways in which we understand the universe. And the fact that, we as Masons talk about how to apply geometric principles to our morality, and the fact that NASA and the ESA talks about geometry as a way to understand the universe, I think is fascinating, and shows that Freemasonry really is onto something when it comes to the value and the importance of geometry in our day-to-day lives, but for both scientific understanding and moral understanding. Even Abraham Lincoln reportedly used Euclid to better have a moral understanding and grasp of the universe, which is kind of a really cool thing. Right, as they say here, geometry and space exploration are intertwined disciples that rely on each other for navigation, design, mapping, understanding the universe's geometry, and predicting celestial phenomena. Geometry provides a mathematical framework for exploring and navigating onto the space. For instance, it plays a crucial role in calculating the trajectories and orbits for spacecraft, as well as influencing their design and construction. As an observational cosmologist, I can mention that Einstein's theory of general relativity describes the gravitational interactions between celestial bodies in terms of the curvature of space-time. Concepts from differential geometry are essential for understanding and applying general relativity to phenomena such as black holes, gravitational waves, and the expanding universe. When you say the Masonic Encyclopedia, I assume you are referring to Mackey. And Mackey 33rd. I do not know, except what I will say is right? Freemasonry is not a religion, so it should not be mentioning Jesus, because Jesus would have no connection to Freemasonry any more than Allah would. I don't believe Allah is referenced in the book either, right? Um, I think I don't think it was mentioned in Mackie. I think it was mentioned in Edmund Ronayne, right, from 1887. Um, Let me see if I can find that. Well, I mean, so Baal, to my knowledge, Baal represents the sun, moon, kind of celestial bodies, which you do see in many ancient religions, right? The point of Masonic symbolism, and this is something I truly believe, is we in Freemasonry are all, like, whether you're, we humans, human beings, we're all dipping from the same well. We are all relying on the same mythological foundations on which to create rituals and ideas and symbols. So, I don't know a lot about Baal. To my knowledge, it referenced, ancient celestial bodies. And again, as Freemasons, stars are part of our symbols. The idea of, lodges kind of go east to west, sun and moon. So, in that sense, yeah, there's a connection between the two. But you look, for example, the example I've given a million times, the square and compasses are often shown in Chinese mythology as being held by Fuxi and Nuwa, which are two ancient Chinese mythological symbols. That doesn't mean the ancient Chinese invented Freemasonry. It just means these symbols pop up over and over and over again in various religious traditions, as well as non-religious traditions such as Freemasonry, as well as civic and civil organizations, right? When you're trying to create symbolism and allegories, you tend to draw from the same well, if you will. And I don't know much about Moloch. Isn't Moloch what they say was worshipped in Bohemian Grove or something, like the owl? I'm just looking it up now. I'm trying to see if I can find this. I could be wrong about that. I'm trying to think what the name of the owl was. Um, well, the planet Saturn was Moloch by the Ammonites and the Canaanites and the Phoenicians and the Carthaginians. So, I mean, I guess what I'd say is, and Mackey as well. He was writing at a time when ancient history was a big deal. You had a lot of not just Masons but people in general traveling to ancient Egypt and being big onto mysticism and ancient Egyptian philosophy and holding seances. And a lot of that stuff Mackey imputed into his book of Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, even though, in all of my time in Freemasonry, I've never actually heard Baal or Moloch or any of that stuff referenced. So you can take that for whatever it's worth. Unfortunately, a lot of kind of Masonic writings came out at a time of very, of kind of a mysticism in Victorian England, and people were holding seances, people were talking about like mummies and ancient religions, and some of that stuff kind of made its way into Masonic writings, but not Masonic ritual. At least no Masonic rituals which I've ever taken part in. Um, but that is very general. I'm the first to admit I've not studied a ton about Baal or Moloch. So I guess Harry, if that makes sense, right? But the reason why Jesus would not be mentioned in a Masonic encyclopedia is for the same reason you would not, to my knowledge, have Allah or other religious figures mentioned, um, because it's not Freemasonry is not a religion. You will have symbolic figures mentioned, right? Like Baal, Moloch. Those are more symbolic figures that represent certain symbolism, but not religion per se. If that makes sense. From the Mormon, right? He was the founder of Mormonism, right? He was a Freemason. Um, he was a Freemason first, then invented Mormonism. The extent to which he, because I'm not a Mormon myself, the extent to which he adopted, or not even adopted, the extent to which he borrowed, shall we say, or stole, you could say, Masonic ideals and imparted them into Mormonism, I don't know, but I'm sure there are some overlap. I'm sure there's plenty of overlap. I mean, if he was a Mason and it affected him greatly, it would make sense. But that's not unique to Mormonism, nor is that unique to Freemasonry. The Future Farmers of America was founded by 4 Freemasons, and the Future Farmers of America, a lot of their structures are Masonic in kind of design because it was founded by Freemasons. You see the same thing with the Free Gardeners. You see the same thing with another agricultural group. I can't think of their name. You see it with the Odd Fellows. I mean, Freemasonry in the 1920s and even before that was so ubiquitous. So many people were Freemasons that when they were forming different groups, a lot of Masonic ideals tended to get assimilated therein. And it's like, why reinvent the wheel? If it's good enough for Freemasonry, it'd be good enough for the Future Farmers of America, for example. Yes, I agree with that, by the way. I've agreed with that 100%. I've always said that. Good artists. I've even said good Masons borrow, great Masons steal, right? I've said that a bunch of times. What I mean by that is if you're a Freemason and if you're a worshipful master and you want to know how to have a successful lodge experience, don't reinvent the wheel. Look at what other Masonic buildings are doing or Masonic lodges are doing that are successful, and see if you can steal those events and hold them for yourself. Why not? Right? That is true, Rondo Ellsworth, but I'd also change that slightly. I'd say most organizations in the Western world share structural similarities with Masonry, and most Masonic organizations share structural similarities with Western organizations, because again, Freemasonry itself was not reinventing the wheel. It was taking its structures from parliament, from governments, from civic organizations. It was taking its ideas from operative Freemasonry, right? And so they all it's not as though it was Freemasonry and then everything borrowed from it. Freemasonry borrowed from structures that existed before it, and groups afterwards borrowed from structures that existed before it. So everything's kind of borrowing from everything else. Again, the way I described it, right? We're all kind of dipping and sharing from the same well. And that well can sometimes be metaphorical or symbolic imagery, as well as the structural way in which we organize our bodies and organizations. I try to be, I don't always succeed. Harry Backrook, what's the bit about? Well, I've never heard that bit before. I've heard, in Masonic, and I would say I agree with this. Generally speaking, one of the ideas in the Masonic rituals, which I've taken part in, is you should try to help those in need, but it gives you the warning of, but if it's going to cause injury to yourself or your family, you need to take that into account. So, for example, If somebody is drowning, um, my first instinct might be to jump in the water and try to rescue them. But if I can't swim, then jumping in the water may not be the best idea, right? So Freemasonry does allow for an understanding that you have to care for yourself and your family. We're expected to give, to be charitable, but if I have $10 left to my name and I need that $10 to buy my kid medicine, I should not give that $10 to somebody on the street, right? That's not saying screw the less fortunate. That's being prudent, right? The term is basically, um, being charity as much as prudence would allow you to be, because prudence is a virtue. And I believe in being charitable, but I also believe in being rational and prudent. I would say we as Freemasons lean more towards being charitable, which is then prudent, which is a good thing. I think it's okay to cause ourselves a level of harm if it means helping somebody else. But we have to also be prudent about how much harm we're willing to cause ourselves. But I've never heard anybody have this idea of, screwing the less fortunate. That is definitely not anything I've ever seen in any Masonic teachings, rituals, understandings, lodges. In fact, I would say Freemasons often tend to lean more towards helping others, often at the expense of themselves, which can sometimes cause harm in and of itself to themselves. Well, I mean, how do I describe this? Because I don't know. So I don't know, Harry, if you've ever seen the movie Contagion, which came out in 2000 and I think 2007, something like that. Uh, Anyways, it was about a virus that spreads through America, and at one point, the head of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, finds out that they are going to quarantine or put a blockade around Chicago, I believe it was, and say like, no one gets in and out of Chicago, and he's asked not to tell anybody about the blockade, because if he does that and people find out, then they're going to all try to leave en masse, and then the what's it called, the quarantine won't work, right? But the what does he do? He, the head of the CDC ends up calling his wife, who lives in Chicago, and he calls his wife and he tells his wife, get out, there's going to be a quarantine, you need to leave right away. The wife calls one of her friends, and, people find out. And he gets in trouble for this, obviously, and somebody points out, look, we all have families, we all have people who are going to be affected by this. By virtue, you used your position of power to, give your family a leg up. And he said, look, I did it, and whether it's right and wrong, anybody would have done the same thing in my position. I have to take care of the people in my lifeboat first. And I love my wife, and so be it, right? When it comes to Freemasonry, I understand the desire to want to help those that are closest to you, whether it be your family or whether it be your Masonic brothers. And certainly, I would find myself often having my charitable, if I knew two people who needed help, and I could exclusively help one of them. One is a Mason, one is a non-Mason. I would probably help the Mason first, just by virtue of the fact that he's a brother and, I know him. But what Freemasonry would also teach me is I should try to help both as much as I can, right? at a certain point, you have to kind of direct your charity. You can't just help everybody all the time. You only have so much money, so much time, so much, like even for you, Harry, I'm assuming, I mean, I don't know what you think of me, but I'm assuming if you saw that I was in need of assistance and somebody you did not know was in need of assistance, you might help me first, all things being equal, because you know me. I don't know for sure, right? But I'd assume when you have that pre-existing relationship, you would try to help me first. Um, that's not to say you don't care about the other person. That's just to say, well, but could you help all? Right? That's the issue. Let's imagine you have a situation where you can exclusively help. There's two people who need help, but you have the ability to help one person and that's it, right? Or help one person first. You know, two people are drowning. You have to decide who you can, swim to first to help them. Maybe you use people you already know to help, right? Sometimes that's just the way it is. But what I'd say is what Freemasonry does, and the beautiful thing about it, is it increases the net of people we want to be helpful towards. And it teaches us that we should always try to be engage in charitable acts. So we want to help as many people as we can. Certainly, because they have a pre-existing relationship with my Masonic brothers, I may, want to help them and think about how I can be charitable towards them. Um, but that doesn't mean only. Well, you're talking about the idea of, again, we as Freemasons, and I think that's a beautiful thing. If I'm traveling to a place I've never been to before and I know I need assistance, I can travel to a Masonic lodge and ask for help. I think that's a beautiful thing, right? I think that's a wonderful thing. Um, well, I'm not ignoring you, Crystal. I'm answering questions from Harry, but I am not a cult leader because Freemasonry is not a cult. Freemasonry is a fraternal or a civic organization, but definitely not a cult. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the kind of the teachings of Freemasons helping one another and supporting one another. And the beautiful thing is the average person maybe has within their circumference 10 to 20 people that they know well that they would consider helping at the drop of a hat. We as Freemasons, by virtue of being a Freemason, have millions of people that we would consider helping at the drop of a hat. That's a pretty beautiful thing, I think. Is that what you would describe as a false religion, a cult? Because Freemasonry is not a false religion. It's not a religion of any sort, nor is it a cult. It is a civic or social group that, amongst other things, encourages charity amongst its membership and to the outside world. And by the way, I hope everybody watching this is doing well. Please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new. I will be back on 1 a.m. tonight. I will be having upcoming my 24-hour live stream on August 21st, a 3-hour Instagram live session on August 20th from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and August 16th, I will be streaming from the Windsor Hip Hop Festival. So please take a few moments to check that out as well. I hope you guys answered my poll question. Do you think that the tariffs will affect Canadian U.S. Masonry? I'm always happy to have you on the stream, Harry. Even though you and I disagree, it's still great to have you. Don't forget, you guys can always support me on Patreon, follow me on social media, all that good jazz as well. I do have to go pretty soon. I got to get my hair cut, got to do some work, post some stuff on social media. But I'm always happy to hang out with you, Harry, and anybody else who wants to join. What do you mean, what hair? This is a lot of hair. And I don't want to clip my own hair. It's too much work, and I do a terrible job of it. I just was reading in the news 5 soldiers hospitalized after shooting at Fort Stewart. I don't know where Fort Stewart is. I guess it's in Georgia. Thoughts are with them for whatever it's worth. I know that doesn't really mean a whole lot if you've been shot, that somebody's thinking of you, but somebody is thinking of you, and I hope that I don't know if there's any casualties. I hope that they recover. As of 20 minutes ago, Brina Gordon, a spokesperson for Memorial Health, confirmed that at least 2 people injured in Fort Stewart have been transferred to the hospital, level 1 trauma center. Suspect, 28 years old. I guess what I'd say is yeah, thoughts are with them. For whatever it's worth, I do believe that if there was more Freemasonry in the world, there'd be less incidents like this. I think there'd be less crime in general. By the way, if there was ever, I mentioned Patreon before. If any of my Patreons ever want to make any suggestions, whether you are a free member or you pay or whatever it is, if you're a patron and you want to let me know and you have any ideas on what you want to see from this stream, I do try to listen to what my Patreons suggest first. So I hope that you guys will take a few moments to follow me on Patreon and then message me, use the community tab, and let me know, what do you want to see me discuss? What ideas, thoughts, topics do you have? By all means, if you want to do that, it's care of, let me just put the address in. But then if you do that, write some suggestions you have for topics you want to see me cover, and I'll do my best to cover them. It is Scoring Compass Promotions, care of Windsor Masonic Temple, 986 Olette Avenue, Windsor, Ontario, N9A1C6. But, despite the fact it looks like I have no hair, I do have some hair and I need to get it cut at some point. Thank you for that, Harry. So, despite what you say, Harry, I am going to be getting my hair cut shortly. Thank heavens, it looks like nobody was killed with the during the shootings at the fort, which is a great thing. By the way, I was talking earlier about the tariffs. It's still have the poll question up. Doug Ford is the Canadian, is the Ontario, Premier of Ontario, says Canada's tariff plan solid but offers no specifics after calls with Carney Lutnick. Ontario Premier Doug Ford expressed confidence Wednesday in Canada's ability to fight tariffs, but offered few details from his conversation with key decision makers to shed light on Canada's response to U.S. Be kind, Harry. His brother passed away, so I think once you pass away, you get a certain level of, shall we say, forgiveness or grace, perhaps is a better term. didn't offer any specifics on the conversations, which he described as confidential, but reiterated he believes Carney is doing everything in his power to get a fair trade deal with the U.S. What's going on, Smokey? Good to see ya. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's like saying a boot, right? A-B-O-O-T, a boot instead of about. I don't know if slash how he did that. Um, but okay. Is that what, I don't know that term. Is that what Canadians are called? I've never heard that term before, so I guess for me it's coffee beans. That's the only type of beans I like. Oh, it's a race. Yeah, I think it's actually a racist term for Mexicans, right? Well, let's not be saying that, Harry. That's not cool. We're gonna remove that. Well, Mister, you gotta be careful with some of those jokes, Harry. With that, Mister keeps on ticking. I'm gonna have to disagree with you. Um, I it's youtube.com/Cameron Adamson. It's just some text as my profile pic. Um, Let me see if I can find it and send it to you. Oops, why is it not working? Here it is, at Cameron Adamson. Please hit that like and subscribe button there. So, Mr. Keeps on Ticking, I mean, I actually have a membership in a Masonic lodge in Israel, in Tel Aviv, Lodge Holy Land, and I'm proud to be a Mason out of Israel. Having said that, I'm also a two-stater. I think I'm 100% in favor of the Palestinians having a state. So I think, honestly, I think it was long overdue. I support, and I speak exclusively for myself, I support recognition of a Palestinian state. I think it's insane it hasn't happened already. I would be, I guess, a Zionist in that I believe that Israel should also exist. But I think the one solution to, I mean, there's no simple and easy solution, and it's easy to say those things. But I think we need two states in the Middle East. I think we need a Palestinian state, and we need a we need an Israeli state. So, take that for whatever it's worth. But I would support Carney's decision. I do not believe Trump will rebuild Solomon's Temple. I don't think there's any plans for anybody to rebuild Solomon's Temple. I think they have more pressing concerns, to be honest. Christopher, that is very unkind of you. Not everybody can see what he said. It is the Western Wailing Wall. It's part of Solomon's Temple. It's part of the second temple, right? King Solomon was the first temple. Then there was the second temple built, which was destroyed by Titus, the Roman emperor. I think like 68 A.D. I'm probably getting these dates very wrong, but it's the second temple. The first temple was, probably more mythological than actual and historical, but was under King Solomon. Dennis, I'm not sure what that means. I mean, we have in North America 3 states. That doesn't mean we're serving 3 masters. So it's just a matter of having 2 states. Frederick Lip, I am from Canada, born and raised in Winnipeg, currently live in Windsor. Frederick, by the way, if you're new to the stream, please hit that like and subscribe button. But, I think Obviously, like I said, I'm proud to be a member of the Masonic Lodge in Israel. Um, but I think, my heart aches every time I see any of the horrors in Gaza. Um, in North America, Canada, U.S., Mexico. So if when you said you cannot serve two masters, what you meant by that is you cannot have two states in the Middle East. I don't see why not. Or in, Israel, Palestine. I don't see why not. Welcome from Austria. I don't know if I've ever had anybody from Austria on the stream before. Like I said, I hope you'll be so kind as to hit that like and subscribe button. And I truly appreciate it. Well, I mean, you serve the president and you serve Jesus, right? So you can serve. It's just the nature of it, right? What are you serving? Where are you serving it? I think that's the key idea, right? There are different, um, you know, part of being alive is you have different masters at different parts in your life, right? Even master is not the right term necessarily, but you serve different beings, if you will. But which two gods, Dennis? So I'm not quite sure to what you are referring, but I appreciate you being here. I mean, you say that, Dennis, but if the police, you're driving and the police pull you over, if not serving the police, you're obeying the police. So, does he say that? People have told me that, but I've never actually seen the Bible verse that, you know, um, confirms that. So I don't know if that is the case at all. Again, some police are Freemasons, most are not. The vast majority of police are not Freemasons. I know a couple who are, but so are plumbers, so are carpenters, so are custodians, so are lawyers, so are um, uh, so are the unemployed for that matter, right? There is no specific Masonic occupation. I was a probation officer, not anymore, but I was for many years. Much appreciated, Smokey. Thank you so much for that. And that is a stream where we'll be hanging out together. And yeah, I actually have got a few different. I've got two Cameron Adams streams as well. Um, Matthew 6:24. Is that the idea of not taking secret oaths? Or is that the idea of God and money? Well, yeah, there are many, like civic society to function has many different uh, you know, people in different positions of authority. That's just the nature of being in a society, right? You need health inspectors to make sure that when you're eating at a restaurant, there's not, rat droppings in the food, things like that. So it's just part of it. Is there different people at different levels of power in civic society, which I don't think indicates that there's anything necessarily wrong with civic society, or that that's serving two masters. And even money, right? It's a matter of just being smart about it. I think it's fine to want to be careful and smart with your money, but if you make that your whole life, there's going to be a problem as well. Get back to work, Smokey, but thank you for being here. As always, it is much, much appreciated. Uh, Well, I'm not opposed to politicians having dual citizenship. Uh, I'm not sure what the connection is. I think the implication is what you're saying is if you take a secret obligation or a secret oath, you are of divided loyalties, which I don't believe there's any reason to believe that to be the case. Because if you have any type of secret, you could be argued to be of divided loyalties, right? You have secrets, Harry, which you're not going to share for, safety, security reasons, or for reasons of, you want to preserve something for yourself. That doesn't mean that you have divided loyalties. Um, I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case. I have no issues with you being a dual citizen and holding political office. Um, right? Like, for example, you're born in, I don't know, you're born in America, you're automatically an American citizen, you travel to Canada, you become a Canadian citizen, you want to run for office, I'm fine with that. I have no issues with that. I could understand maybe being required to, at some point, renounce your American citizenship. Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, when you've got, APAC and stuff lobbying in America without having to register, I think I'm not overly concerned about that. Um, because I think it's possible for somebody to have two citizenships, but also have loyalty to the country which they're serving at that time. Well, I'm not going to do that because, I think Israel is doing fine. I don't think they need my money. Um, right. And by the way, I'm not opposed to, I think, um, like I said, I don't believe that, well, but that's a separate issue. So going back to the idea of, Freemasons taking a private oath, I do not believe that that indicates any divided loyalties because everybody has some type of secrets which they maintain, whether it be for personal reasons or security reasons or emotional reasons or monetary reasons. That does not automatically um, indicate that they are. Um, that does not automatically indicate, right, any type of divided loyalties. And I think assuming so, when Freemasons are so active in the community, helping the community is kind of, um, it's very unfair, I think is how I'd put it. I do not know. No, the lodge I belong to is Lodge Holy Land. I do not believe it is held in a cave. It actually doesn't really hold meetings. It primarily is an affiliate lodge, so its purpose is to kind of welcome membership from around the world for individuals who are interested in belonging to a lodge in Israel. Um, they tend to meet when they have visitors traveling to Israel or Masonic visitors traveling to Israel as part of Masonic trips, which doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it happens. Well, I mean, it's not just Israel. There are many Masonic lodges that hold not necessarily every meeting, but special meetings in a cave as kind of like a fun little thing. So those, because it's kind of be neat to hold a Masonic meeting in a cave or in a mine. So they'll have like once a year they'll do this thing. They'll find an abandoned mine that's safe, obviously. They'll set it up like a Masonic lodge. They'll have a meeting. They'll go outside for lunch. They'll have a big barbecue and a party, and then they will go back in. So the idea of like a cave meeting or cave degree is actually you're seeing that more and more often as a fun thing for lodges to do. And again, if I had a cave close by and I knew that I could hold a meeting there and get permission, why not? It could be fun. Something fun, try new and fun, different things. If you're referring to Gaza, I 100% agree with you. Yeah, I think it's incredibly sad what's happening to the children there. Not just there, there's many children suffering all around the world. And anytime children are suffering, I think it's an incredibly sad thing. I do not know any reference to children in caves. I've known some conspiracy theorists about children in caves. I once read conspiracy theories about children being held in caves under Central Park in New York, which I think was a whole lot of baloney. So, you know, I would say that that strikes me as baloney also. All right, let's give it. There are horrific things. I mean, there are horrific things, unfortunately, happening almost everywhere, I think. There's also great things happening everywhere as well. Well, Lush Farm, in fairness, I've been doing this stream for 2 hours and 31 minutes, so I'm very tired because I was also streaming at 1 a.m. Just wait till you see my 24-hour stream, which will be August 21st, starting at 2 p.m., going through till August 22nd, starting at 2 p.m. In the meantime, Lush, please hit that like and subscribe button, or at least the like button. I will be going soon. I gotta get my hair cut. I gotta take a nap too. But I hope that you find this entertaining. And Mr. Keeps on Ticking, like I said, next week I'll be mailing you your item, your coin. So just make sure you send me the information as to your address. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Follow me on social media. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on all those places. All the places I be. Follow me on all of those locations. And thank you, everybody, for your time, as always. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see everybody soon. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.